At the start of the 20th century, there was no country more powerful than Britain. In 1914, the British Empire ruled over nearly 1/4 of the Earth's land and people. Its navy controlled the oceans. London was the financial heart of the world, and the British pound was the currency that global trade depended on. If you wanted to move money, you went through London. If you wanted to insure ships, you went to London. If you wanted credit, you went to London. Britain wasn't just a powerful country, it was the system that held the global economy together. And yet, within just a few decades, that position would vanish. Not because Britain lost a single decisive battle, not because its enemies invaded London, but because of a series of choices that slowly drained the economic foundation of its power. This is the story of how Britain went from being the center of the world to being replaced by a country that, in 1914, wasn't even considered a true superpower yet, the United States. To understand what Britain lost, you first have to understand what it had. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, Britain was the most advanced industrial economy on Earth. It had industrialized earlier than anyone else. It had factories, railroads, ports, and shipyards, while much of the world was still largely agricultural. British companies didn't just make goods, they built the global trade network itself. British ships carried raw materials from colonies to factories. British factories turned those materials into finished products. British banks financed the trade. British insurance companies protected it, and the Royal Navy guaranteed that no one could seriously disrupt it. This system made Britain incredibly rich. The empire stretched across India, Canada, Australia, large parts of Africa, and key ports in Asia. But the real power wasn't the red color on the map. The real power was economic. Britain was the world's creditor. Other countries owed Britain money. Other governments depended on British capital, and the British pound, backed by gold, was trusted everywhere. In many ways, Britain wasn't just an empire. It was the world's banker, the world's shipping company, and the world's financial referee all at once. Across the Atlantic, America was watching. In 1914, America was big and rich in resources, but it was not yet the leader of the world. It had a smaller army than European powers, it stayed mostly out of global politics, and it still depended heavily on European markets and European finance. Culturally and financially, Americans still looked to Europe, especially to Britain. That balance was about to change. In the summer of 1914, a political assassination in Europe triggered a chain reaction of alliances and declarations of war. Within weeks, the continent was in flames. Britain faced a choice. It could stay out and risk losing influence in Europe, or it could enter the war and try to stop Germany from becoming the dominant power. Britain chose war. At the time, this decision seemed logical. Britain had treaty obligations, it had strategic interests, and it believed it could afford the fight. But no one fully understood how different this war would be from anything before it. World War I was not a short, limited conflict. It was a total war. Entire economies were converted into war machines. Factories stopped making consumer goods and started making weapons. Railways moved soldiers instead of products. Governments borrowed and spent at a scale never seen before. And this cost money, enormous amounts of money. By the end of 1918, Britain was spending millions of pounds every single day just to keep the war going. Before the war, Britain's national debt was manageable. After the war, it had exploded to many times its previous size. Even more damaging was what Britain had to stop doing. While it focused on fighting, it stopped investing in the industries and trade networks that had made it rich. Exports fell, factories wore out, trade routes were disrupted. The engine that had powered British wealth was slowing down. And to keep the war going, Britain had to look for money elsewhere. That elsewhere was the United States. At first, America was officially neutral, but neutrality did not mean staying out of the business. American banks began lending huge sums to Britain and its allies. American factories began supplying weapons, food, fuel, steel, and equipment. While Europe was being destroyed, American industry was expanding. By the time the United States formally entered the war in 1917, the shift had already begun. Britain was no longer the world's main lender, it was becoming a borrower. By the end of the war, Britain owed enormous sums to the United States. This was a historic reversal. For generations, Britain had been the country others owed money to. Now it was dependent on British credit. The war ended in 1918, and Britain was on the winning side. But financially, it was exhausted. Its debt was massive, its economy was damaged, and its empire, which had been held together partly by the image of strength and success, was starting to crack. At the same time, the United States was stronger than ever. Its factories were modern, its financial system was flush with capital, and New York was beginning to challenge London as the center of global finance. During the 1920s, Britain tried to return to the old system. It tried to restore the pound's old status. It tried to act like nothing fundamental had changed. But the world had changed. The Great Depression in 1929 made everything worse. Global trade collapsed. Banks failed. Unemployment surged in both Britain and America. And just as Britain was trying to recover, history repeated itself. In 1939, another world war began. Once again, Britain faced an existential threat, and once again it had to fight. But this time, the financial situation was even more fragile. Britain needed weapons, ships, planes, food, and fuel, and once again it turned to the United States. This time, the support came through programs like Lend-Lease. America supplied Britain with what it needed to survive, but nothing was truly free. To get this support, Britain had to give up gold reserves, overseas investments, and strategic assets. It was slowly selling off the accumulated wealth of centuries just to stay in the war. By 1945, Britain had won again, and by 1945, Britain was effectively bankrupt. Its debt was enormous, its economy was strained, and it no longer had the financial strength to maintain a global empire. At the same moment, the United States was in a completely different position. Its cities were untouched by war. Its factories were more powerful than ever. Its financial system dominated global lending, and its currency was now the most trusted in the world. In 1944, even before the war ended, the future system was designed. At a conference in Bretton Woods, dozens of countries agreed on a new global financial order. The US dollar, not the British pound, would be the center of the system. New institutions like the IMF and the World Bank were created, based in the US and shaped by American influence. This wasn't an accident. It was the formal recognition that economic leadership had shifted. After the war, Britain began letting go of its empire, partly by choice, mostly by necessity. India became independent. Other colonies followed. Maintaining control was simply too expensive. By the 1950s, the contrast was clear. While Britain was still rebuilding and rationing, the United States was experiencing an economic boom. American companies dominated global markets, American culture spread everywhere, and American military power replaced Britain's role as the main guarantor of Western security. One moment made this reality impossible to ignore. In 1956, Britain and France tried to act like old empires again during the Suez Crisis. They attempted to use military force to protect their interests. The United States said no, and when America refused financial support, Britain had no choice but to back down. That was the moment the world understood Britain could no longer act independently at the top level. the leadership had fully passed to the United States. So, what's the real lesson here? Britain didn't lose its position because it was weak or incompetent. It lost it because it spent its economic foundation faster than it could rebuild it. Two massive wars consumed the wealth that took generations to create. And once that economic base was gone, military and political power couldn't survive on their own. Empires usually don't collapse in one dramatic moment. They fade when their finances no longer support their ambitions. The United States didn't replace Britain by accident. It replaced Britain because it had the factories, the capital, the currency, and the timing. And history doesn't stop here. Every dominant power eventually faces the same test. Can it keep creating more wealth than it consumes? Or will it start living off the past? That question is what decides who leads the world next. Not speeches, not flags, not even armies. In the end, economic reality always wins. Before you go, a quick reminder. If you want updates like this, deep history and short explainers straight on your phone, join our WhatsApp channel. Scan the QR code on screen and join us there. You'll get new videos, important updates, and exclusive content. Don't miss it. Scan the QR code now and join our WhatsApp channel.